This is Bean to Barstool, a podcast that looks at the intersections of craft chocolate, craft beer, and other artisan drinks. My name is David Nilsson. I'm a professional drinks writer, an advanced cicerone, the author of Pairing Beer and Chocolate, and the creator and host of this show. The music for this episode is by my dear friend, indie folk musician Anna P.S. You can find out more about Anna's music in the show notes or on annapsmusic.com. You can find links and information about our guests in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoy this episode of Bean to Barstool. Hey everyone, welcome to Bean to Barstool. I've got a bonus episode for you today. I just got back from Mexico where I was judging at Copa Cerveza, the biggest of the Mexican craft beer competitions. A couple weeks before that, I was in Calgary judging at the Canada Beer Cup. October is always just ridiculously busy for judging and for events in general. The biggest North American chocolate festival, the Northwest Chocolate Fest in Seattle, is in October. Usually that weekend or the next week, the biggest North American beer festival, the Great American Beer Fest, is in Denver. And then you've got Copa Cerveza and all this other stuff. It is always a crazy month, and I don't end up getting to just relax and enjoy fall as much as I would like to, but I always enjoy getting to travel. I decided this year not to go out to GABF, which I typically cover as a writer, but with this month's schedule, it was just a little bit too much with Canada and then Mexico. So I watched the Great American Beer Festival Awards live stream, which I do when I can't make it out there, and then, left a week later to head to Mexico. I love beer awards. They are flawed, obviously. We'll talk a little bit later on about some of those flaws and about what beer awards do and do not mean, but I think awards are a ton of fun, especially right now when the industry is in a little bit of a downturn. Some breweries are closing, everybody is struggling. Why not take the opportunities to celebrate and to cheer on our friends and colleagues, to get excited about this a little bit? So I am very pro beer awards. I'm really enjoyed judging as well. I'm grateful for the opportunity to travel to judge these different competitions. And one of the things that I love about beer judging is that when you sit down to judge, you have no idea what style you're going to be judging until that is put in front of you. And so it forces me to practice on styles that maybe I don't spend a whole lot of time with otherwise. I understand them academically and of course, and I've tasted them plenty of times in the past, but maybe they aren't things that I order a lot. So, sitting down and getting to taste through a flight of Schwarzbiers and Munich Dunkels and judging those helps me kind of reacquaint the style and recalibrate to what is good and bad in those spaces. Always love the opportunity to learn from my fellow judges. Different tasters taste differently, describe differently. You can have specific blindnesses, anosmias to different aromas. And so having multiple people at a table allows you all to get the best of each judge and to learn how to be a better judge from the folks you're sitting down with. Every single time I sit down to judge, the very first day before the first flight comes out, I always have this moment of panic of like, this is when I'm going to get exposed as a fraud. Here it comes. Everybody's going to see I'm an imposter and I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't know how to taste beer. And of course, after I taste through a couple and we have our first discussion after a flight, I remember that, I really do know how to do this and I put in the work to become a good beer taster, but also that 3 beer tasters together are better than one. And we can learn from each other and I can get sharper at things that maybe I'm weak on. I don't have any specific anosmias. There aren't any like common off flavors or anything that I cannot detect. However, there are a few that I am slow to register and often need pointed out before I can go back and say, oh yeah, I can see that's there. Trans 2-nonenal, which is like a papery flavor or aroma that you can get in beer from oxidation. I can smell it and taste it, but I'm usually not the first person at the table to pick it out. Also, I've noticed that I just don't register low carbonation as readily as a lot of other judges do. So it's good to kind of see the spots that you're weak in and kind of make yourself pay more attention to those. the way judging works, if you're not familiar at all with how beer judging works, I have not judged any other beverages or foods or anything like that, but I assume this is more or less the same across different categories. The way beer judging works, it's all on software now. So you log into a website and you get your judging forms, and the organizers of the event have coded all of the beers so that when they're brought out to you, you enter a code into that software and it brings up the correct beer for you to judge. Typically, you get a flight of anywhere from 5 to 10 beers within a style or a category. And everybody at the table is going to judge those independently. And then when you're done with that flight, the table captain, the head judge of the table, will guide everybody through discussing the beers. And then you're going to pick the ones that are going to go on to the next round. Or if it's a medal round, you're going to pick the ones that are going to win and what order they're going to win in. For each beer, you are numerically judging each aspect of the beer. So appearance, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall. And then in each of those aspects of the beer, you have the option to write in some description, any noted flaws, things you especially like, advice for the brewer on how they can improve. You are strongly encouraged to do that. I tend to have a higher than average word count on that. I feel like if the brewer is spending the money and the time to send in this beer, only a few are going to win, right? There's only going to be a few beers, a maximum of 3 in each style, that are going to walk away with awards. That doesn't need to mean that the other breweries wasted their time. This is expensive and a time-consuming thing. And so I want to make sure that they get something out of it, and I take the time to accurately describe their beer. And if there are things I think they can do to make it better, then I will provide that guidance on there. I know there are breweries who enter awards specifically for that. They would love to win, but they don't necessarily have any illusion that they're going to win an award. They want expert tasters who don't know who they are, who don't know what beer it is or what brewery it is, to taste their beer objectively and tell them, just describe what they're tasting and what could be better. So my average word count on these is about 85, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's not necessarily complete sentences. And it's usually on the higher end within a judging group. I always leave feedback on every single aspect, even if there is not a flaw that I'm pointing out. So on appearance, I might literally just be describing what I see. Pale gold, very good clarity, eggshell white foam, looks nice. That doesn't necessarily mean much, but it does tell the brewer that I took the time to slow down and pay attention to their beer. I usually am a little bit hesitant to provide very specific technical advice on what they can do to improve. Even though I have a good technical understanding of brewing processes and ingredients, I am not a professional brewer. So if I detect an off flavor, I'm going to describe that it's there and maybe suggest this is what might help you address this. But I usually am not going to give super concrete technical guidance and leave that to the judges at the table who are brewers, who can provide that more technical advice to their direct colleagues. I really like the process of tasting blind like this and having to describe every single aspect of the beer, because I am, those of you who've listened to Bean Barstool for a while know that I love beer labels. I love chocolate wrappers. I think the visual appreciation of branding and marketing is part of our enjoyment of these products, and we should absolutely pay attention to them. But there is something to be said for having none of that in front of you and not being influenced by, obviously, the name of the brewery, but the color of the label and the design of it and things that can subtly influence our flavor perception. All you've got in front of you is a sample in an unmarked glass, and you have to come up with a description for every single aspect of this. And it kind of forces you to stretch your limbs a little bit and exercise those muscles. It's not the only way to taste. It's not necessarily the best way to taste. It's not how I want to taste most of the time. But if you want to improve as a taster, whether it's with beer, chocolate, whiskey, wine, coffee, whatever it is, get together with another friend or a few friends who are into tasting and give each other blind tastings to describe, and you'll be surprised the way that it helps you grow as a taster. I have never done any professional chocolate judging, which might be a surprise to those of you listening who have heard me describe chocolate quite a bit. I love doing that, but I have not gotten into any technical judging. I am considering doing that in the next year. If anybody listening has advice on certifications or like off-flavor training programs or anything like that for craft chocolate, one of the things that has held me back from doing that, even though in general I would consider myself to be a seasoned taster, is that I don't necessarily have the systematic technical understanding from an off-flavor standpoint to feel confident going in and providing those descriptions and feedback for makers. So if anybody has advice on that, I would welcome hearing it. The judging for Copa Cerveza takes place every year in Chihuahua in northern Mexico, but then the organization Copa Cerveza flies all the judges down to Mexico City, where the awards ceremony takes place and the public-facing festival and the like industry expo all take place right in Mexico City. So we flew down to Mexico City, beautiful city, one of my favorite cities in the world, and got to enjoy the city for a couple days as well as the awards and the expo. Definitely had some fantastic chocolate while I was there. There's several shops within walking distance of the hotel where we stay that I always hit up. Went to Cacao para Todos, which is a small shop, but they also organize a major chocolate festival that frustratingly is happening 1 week after I got back from Mexico City. So it's actually happening at the end of this week while you're first listening to this. Next year, Melinda and I are considering adjusting our travel to stay that extra week and go to Cacao para Todos. If anybody has been to the festival, definitely tell me what your experience was of that in the past. We're definitely looking forward to hopefully experiencing that next year. The shop itself is adorable. In addition to a bunch of excellent Mexican-made craft chocolate, they've got molinillos and clay pots and like decorative things and just a whole bunch of fun celebrations of cacao and chocolate in general. They also serve hot chocolate drinks. I had a mezcal infused hot chocolate, had it made with water, should have had it made with milk. It needed a little bit extra body, but the flavor there was still a lot of fun. I am always amazed when I go into shops, chocolate shops in countries that are growing cacao, Mexico, Ecuador, wherever, how many makers I still just don't know about, have never heard about. As much time as I spend in and around craft chocolate, on Instagram, actively searching for new makers and things, you get to a shop in Mexico City and you see a wall of makers and you're like, I don't know half of these. And it is awesome. I love that discovery. Molinillos, I think as a longtime beer fan, Molinillos might become the beer glassware problem of the chocolate world for me. Every beer lover has way more cool beer glasses than they possibly need, than they will ever be able to consistently use. And I cannot see a Molinillo and not want to buy one. If you're a beer fan listening, you don't know what that is. It's like a long wooden kitchen implement that you use to froth up hot chocolate. And they're often just very visually striking, and they're just fun to have around. I have the ones I need, but I always want to get another one. We went up to Tout Chocolat. You might remember back at the beginning of 2025, I had an episode with Rodrigo from Tout Chocolat and his partner Lucia, who runs Cerveceria Italienne. We talked all about Mexican beer and chocolate and how they can work together and all that stuff. Tout is a fantastic little chocolate shop and coffee shop, cafe. Picked up some great bonbons there, had some great hot chocolate, also had an excellent pan de muerte that Rodrigo updated the recipe for this year. It had this orange chocolate ganache in the top that was just absolutely amazing. Then walked over to Dichoso Cacao, another great little chocolate shop and maker. Picked up a bunch of chocolate, had chocolate lavado, cacao lavado, which was really delightful. Just on this little quiet side street in Mexico City, sat out on the sidewalk and enjoyed that.
We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Fifth Street Brew Pub in Dayton, Ohio is one of our sponsors at Bean to Barstool and Final Gravity, our print beer zine, and they just happen to be one of my favorite hometown breweries. They're one of the only cooperatively owned breweries in the country, a testament to their community focus and support. Inside a building from the 1850s in the historic neighborhood of St. Anne's Hill, Fifth Street Brew Pub offers a warm, cozy atmosphere and excellent beer and food. And you can take your favorite beers to go with their Gem City swing tops, elegant swing top bottles filled straight from the taps with regular favorites like St. Anne's Pils and Rough Gem Farmhouse Ale, or whatever their current seasonals are. I recently had a Sage Pilsner from them that was fantastic. Sage is one of those flavors that can get away from you really quickly, but they used it in a really graceful way in this beer. Loved it. If you're in the Dayton area, head over to 5th Street to hang out or grab beer to go, and if you're visiting Dayton, and you should, make sure 5th Street is on your list. Cheers. Thursday evening of last week, Copa Cerveza had their awards, so all the judges sit together. There's a ton of energy in the room. All the brewers are excited, and it is so much fun to see in person people win their awards and jump up and high-five all their colleagues and run up on stage. If you experience that, I don't know how you can argue against awards. I know they aren't perfect, but it is there are so few wins right now and so few things to celebrate, and it is infectious to see that kind of excitement from folks who have been laboring all year, probably struggling to get by from a business standpoint, to finally just get to experience like this one night of unadulterated joy where they get to celebrate the fact that other people said your beer is awesome. So I am very pro awards. They aren't perfect, so let's take a moment to talk about what beer awards do and don't mean, because I think some of the complaint against them comes from maybe a bit of a straw man argument of like what they maybe imagine people are reading into these awards, and I don't think that that's necessarily what is there. What awards do not mean is that the beer that wins a category is definitely, absolutely the best example of that beer you will ever find. That's not what that award means. Not every brewery enters awards. There are lots of examples of a given style that never ever end up on a judge's table, and one of them might, by some agreed upon technical standpoint, might be a better example of the style. That's always going to be subjective. The best beer is the beer that you want to be drinking at any given moment, and that's true within any given style. So the fact that a beer wins a gold medal doesn't mean this is definitely, beyond argument, the best example of style X that exists in this country or this world or whatever it is. Nobody is saying that. What we're saying is that it is a great example of this style, and you should drink it if you find it. That's what an award is ultimately saying. It's saying if you see this beer, definitely check it out. If a brewery does not win an award, or a specific beer does not win an award, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't mean that that beer isn't awesome. It just means that on that given judging day, when 3 highly qualified judges were tasting through these beers, if that beer was on the table, maybe it wasn't the one that, got picked within their top 3. Maybe it hadn't even been entered into competition, so it never even got judged. It doesn't necessarily mean that a beer isn't good because it didn't win. Nobody is saying otherwise. Not everyone enters awards. Not every brewery sends their beers in. There are all kinds of reasons for that. Finances, there are entry fees in order to send in your beer. And if your brewery is maybe struggling month to month, especially in the current market, then maybe you decide that entry fee is not worth it for you, and that's totally fine. Sometimes it's a timing issue. You don't have maybe the best beer in the condition you want it at the time that you need to send that in, and so it just doesn't make sense for you to do it. Maybe you brew beers that don't perfectly fit the style guidelines. One of the weaknesses of beer judging is that if we're going to judge, we have to have some kind of rubric to judge against. So we have style guidelines we use. That doesn't mean that a beer that doesn't perfectly fit those styles isn't awesome, but we have an obligation to judge against what we are saying this style is supposed to be like. And so if a brewery makes beers that don't fit those styles, they might decide it's not worth to sending those beers in and be judged against a rubric that their beer was never intended to fit. A brewery might decide they have nothing to gain by entering awards, especially if it's a brewery that has a lot of hype, if a brewery that is extremely popular at a point in time. What do they have to gain? If anybody knows that they entered and they didn't win, all that can do is deflate some of that hype. Or even if they're really, really hyped and they win bronze in a category that they are they are just coveted in, that might not look great for them either. So maybe they decide it can only hurt them to enter awards. Or it just does not fit the business model for a particular brewery for whatever reason. What I look for when I want to gain from the awards some understanding of how good a brewery is looking for wins across styles. Does this brewery do multiple things well? Looking for a specific beer to win different competitions. So let's say it medals at Copa Cerveza and at the World Beer Cup. Well, now that's probably two different groups of judges who have looked at it blind and emerged with that beer as a medal winner. That's pretty good verification that beer is pretty awesome. Winning multiple years. Again, this is always blind tasting. So you don't know, oh, right, this is that beer that I tasted last year. It is a fool's errand for any judge to ever think that they have guessed what beer they have in front of them. If you were judging, never, ever try to do that. You won't be able to. There's nothing to gain from it. So these are always judged blind, and the fact that a beer emerges year after year is a very good sign that is a fantastic example of a given style, even if, like I said, doesn't necessarily mean that it is the single best, whatever that would mean. Had some fantastic beers while I was down there, copious amounts of macro Mexican lager, which is often one of the best experiences when we're down there. We get all the judges together, and there's just a lot of Tecate and Carta Blanca and Victoria and Indio and whatever else disappearing from very large bottles. But as far as the festival itself, the three best beers that I tasted on the festival floor were in very standard, easy drinking styles. The gold medal winning American Amber Ale from Cerveza Brewer was named Ensenada Sunset. Absolutely fantastic. Gold medal winning American Pale Ale from Cerveceria Wentland called Vaquita Marina, who, thanks to my fellow judge Abby Ramos for explaining that name to me, because what that directly translates to is little sea cow. And so I asked her if that was a manatee, and she pulled it up, and it's actually like a type of dolphin, like a blunt-nosed dolphin that is in the Northern Pacific and is endangered. I'd never heard of it before, but that beer was awesome. And then Chalanga Vienna Lager from Cerveceria Nomada won silver in the Vienna lager category, and that was great. All three of those beers were awesome. Had a couple of chocolate beers, one from Señor Cacao called Mocha Chocolate Stout. I am going to be reaching out to them and looking into what they're doing a little more. Hopefully we'll be able to share more info on them on Bean to Barstool in the near future. Also had a Pozol-inspired porter from Cerveceria Aztlan that was very good. All of these breweries, like consistently, as I was walking around the festival floor, Melinda and I were walking around, we were just continually noting how fantastic the branding is from all of these breweries. Like every single one of them just hits it out of the park in terms of artwork and design. Such cool branding. We are home for just a bit. Then we are off to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan for the 50th anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald sinking. We will be up in the UP for a little while for that. Then later on in November, we've got the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, the last full episode of Bean to Barstool. If you go to our site or to whatever platform you're listening to podcasts on, the last full episode on there, it was a preview of the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. I'll be giving a couple of talks at the festival, as well as a ticketed tasting of beer and spirits infused craft chocolate. You can find all that information on the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival website, which I will put in the show notes, again, as well as that podcast episode. And if you go to the Bean to Barstool shop, you can purchase your tickets for that guided tasting. I hope you're all having a lovely autumn. I hope there's plenty of good chocolate and good beer in your life right now. Next week, we will have an episode looking at both, talking with a professor of chemical biology who will be talking about using the chocolate sensory experience in a classroom setting to make science less intimidating, as well as her work in the survivability of caffeine and theobromine in coffee and chocolate beers, respectively. She did a research project on that, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Thank you all so much for listening to Bean to Barstool. Hope you enjoyed this short bonus episode, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.